So, I am going to forego the usual joke-riddled format. I will try and live up to the standards of the monocle and do some news for once. So, I want to take a deeper dive into this insane BS currently going on with the infrastructure bill. So, Joe Biden says the $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill will cost nothing and add nothing to the national debt. Now, just on the face of it, that is one of the stupidest things I have ever heard in my entire life, and it will probably stay in my top 3. Actually, it is early days in the administration, maybe scrap that. Citing bullshit rubbish about wasting money on tax breaks and loopholes, etc., etc. The usual cliched bollocks you would hear from a career politician who have never had a real job in their entire lives. Gonna sound like Ben Shapiro here for a second, but the idea that giving people a tax break and allowing them to keep more of their own earned money is called a waste by a politician tells you a damn lot about these cretins. As if the rich just sit on a pile of money like some cliche Jewish caricature, as if they never invest that money ever. But there is something obvious about governments that some people do not seem to understand. Government does not generate any revenue of its own. Everything it does is through taxation. It is a parasitic entity that offers nothing productive to society, which makes it evil and immoral. You can disagree with me on that in a philosophical manner, which is cool. You can be wrong, that's fine. Moving along. Now, whenever you see governments make these insane grandiose statements filled with pie-in-the-sky promises, they will never, ever come to fruition and are always much, much more expensive than they say it will be, because governments will simply subsidize their own incompetence with your money. There, I just summed up the problem with government in a single sentence, yay me. Here is a big difference to take notice of between leftist politicians and businessmen. Leftist politicians, very much their presidents, will make these wildly insane speculations that have no basis in any grounded reality. Promises that damn near always vastly exceed their presidential terms by many years. BS like, oh, you will have net zero emissions by 2030. No, you won't. You don't know that, and you will not be alive by 2030 to be told off for being full of shit. They will concretize speculations based on the assumption that their projections remain constant and stable, which is an absurdity, especially when they're the ones holding the reins. Case in point, productivity and taxes, both of which go hand in hand, a basic economic fact that no leftist in the history of time has ever understood, and government can completely ruin both. Again, case in point, Biden's inflation-inducing stimulus checks, which have produced a colossal amount of unemployment. For those that don't know, this cliched phrase, tax the rich, is more than a century old. It is a lefty slogan dating back to America's initial progressive era. Making any policy for the greater good, quote unquote, based on taxing the rich will never ever work for a very simple reason. The rich pay attention to policy. If they see a storm coming, they will take their profits and get the fuck out of Dodge. And government isn't going to do anything about it. Their campaigns are funded by those people. And government isn't going to do with making less money. They will simply tax everyone else more. This is why any politician who promises policy based on taxing the rich and I will not raise the taxes on anyone making X amount of money is a total crock of shit. That is always a lie. It's almost universal. Anytime any politician talks about reducing taxes, they are straight up lying. The exceptions are very few and far between, and those that aren't ever leftist. Here's a good rule of thumb I want everyone to remember. Those who make the rules are never going to disenfranchise themselves. Now, this is a 180 black and white switch of a worldview compared to a businessman. A businessman's projections are based on variables that are constantly shifting, like their employees, their resources, their production costs, supply lines, energy costs, or probably their most glaringly obvious current problem, the incompetence of the state fucking over their business. Anyway, enough of that. The Biden agenda, which is just a debt-inducing shit show, a Trojan horse filled with socialism that the next generation will have to pay for, Biden's own budget officials have contradicted him, saying no, it will raise the debt by $1.4 trillion over 10 years. See? Told you. Well beyond his presidential term. And that $1.4 trillion, I will bet you, is far, far lower than the actual number. Although there is not any official text for Biden's Build Back Better bill, the budget resolution framework, the legislative vehicle for this bill, allows up to $1.7 trillion of new borrowing that is not paid for with more taxes, according to the Committee of a Responsible Federal Budget. Wow, I cannot think of a better example of an oxymoron than that phrase, responsible federal budget. Even the Wall Street Journal was mocking it in an editorial, saying, "One requirement of a modern political flag is being incapable of embarrassment." That actually is a good line. Now, Biden can fuck off. The man is obviously lying through his ass. He's been in politics his entire life. He has a notorious history of embellishing the balls off of just about damn near everything. So let's look at what this would actually cost in terms of more than just a colossal fiscal fuck-up. So according to a study by the Texas Public Policy Foundation, Biden's bullshit agenda will kill 5.3 million jobs, which is more than NAFTA has done since, I think, 1994, to put that in context for you, adding $4.5 trillion to the debt. Told you, here we have an estimate more than 3 times higher than Biden's people. So what else we got? GDP being reduced by more than $3.7 trillion, ironically what his fucking agenda would cost in the first place. Cost American families a combined $1.2 trillion in reduced income via tax increases. Told you. And let's look at how this might impact some states. Arizona, $97 billion and 115,000 jobs lost. West Virginia, $24 billion and 29,000 jobs lost. Texas, a whopping $394 billion and almost 500,000 jobs lost. Funny, Arizona and West Virginia Dems, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, oppose the bills. I wonder why. It's because they'd be tossed out on their ass if they're caught voting for this monstrosity, killing their Senate careers. More on this in a moment. So, a massive tax hike on damn near everything, as we can see here. Top marginal income tax rates with federal, state, and local taxes are over 65%. Corporate tax rate to 26.5%. Marginal tax rate increase of 13 percentage points on some households. Capital gains increased by 25%. Marginal income on small businesses raised by 24%. Severe marriage penalties, because of course government hates families. International taxes on businesses raised by over 20%. 6.89 tax raise per barrel on imported petroleum, and increased tax with inflation. Do you see now why Biden got that at-home energy production? Cap on salt deduction removed. I had to do some research on this because I see Styx keeps banging on about this. So this would overwhelmingly favor the top earners. It's a deduction based on how much you earn. So naturally, the uber rich are better off, benefiting the top 1% and 5% the most, aka Democratic funders. Almost all, 96% of the benefits of salt cap repeal would go to the top quintile, giving an average tax cut of $2,640. 57% would benefit the top 1%, a cut of $33,100, and 25% would benefit the top 0.1% for an average tax cut of nearly $145,000. The remaining 4% of the benefit of removing the cap would go to middle class, 60%, for an average annual tax cut of less than $27. This results in the loss of about $668 billion in revenue over, I think, a 9-year period. You would think if you are funding a multi-trillion-dollar spending project on the back of the rich, quote-unquote, giving them a colossal tax cut makes you seem fucking stupid at best and a disingenuous evil son of a bitch at worst. What else we got? Nearly 35,500 extra in debt on each American household, jeopardizing family farms and businesses when original owner dies, marriage penalty on small business owners as high as $130,200 annually, median family income drops by $12,000, removing cap on salt deduction, a middle-class family receives just $15, while wealthy Democrat donors in blue states receive $150,000. Case in point. And you know the salt deduction argument has value when both fiscal conservatives and uber-lefty progressives argue in favor of keeping the cap. That is actual bipartisan agreement. Far as business impact goes, lost investment of $663 billion. Taxing unrealized capital gains yields 43.4% less revenue than expected. Corporate tax rate hikes reduce wage growth by 23.1% for employees. International tax rate hikes reduce full-time employment by 12,000 jobs. and US tax competitiveness would fall from 21st to 30th. Now, my question is, how did America not need any of this insane amount of socialist horseshit to get the best economy many Americans have seen in their lifetime under Trump? How the fuck do you justify this insane amount of draconian government spending to solve problems that never existed under Trump? Some question maybe people should be asking. Now, I think what is likely going to happen is the US government is going to shut down past the 30th of this month, as is the case when Congress can't decide on a budget proposal at the end of the fiscal year, because Republicans voted on Monday evening to block a resolution aimed at keeping the government open through December, because it included a provision to suspend the debt limit for another year, because the Republicans said, "You're nuts, you're going to cause more inflation." And apparently, the progressive Dems have said pass this by Thursday or else we will tank it. So the Democrats are in a tough nut position. Good. All of this as well is coming off the heels of polls showing an increasing number of people think Joe Biden is a fucking idiot. Didn't notice this in nearly 50 years, but notice it in less than 10 months once the Git has executive power. Well done on that one. Now, the media can try and spin this as a potential win for him, but it seems the infighting with the Dems that are in a loose position in their states with the midterms around the corner are looking at that bill with a bit more awareness of the obvious hellstorm it will unleash, and they can't afford the damage to their states or their Senate careers. And Biden's approval rating continues to crater, and there is nothing on the horizon that looks remotely like it's going to save his worthless ass presidency. And that's all for today. Until next time.